one called MK Often, which is where Gottlieb decided he wanted to explore black magic. So he and
oh my God,
other CIA employees visited with and recruited fortune tellers, palm readers, clairvoyants, astrologists, mediums, psychics, specialists in demonology. I wonder if he talked to Ed and Lorraine Warren.
Dude, probably.
Witches and warlocks, Satanists and other occult practitioners, robotics creators. They're on the list of black magic.
With where AI is potentially going, I wouldn't totally disagree with that categorization.
That's so fucked up presents. That's so fucked up presents. That's so fucked up presents. That's so fucked up presents.
Are you ready to wrap this biatch up?
I am. It's pretty screwed up. So it's not going to get less screwed up by the end of this session, but
we have talked about a lot of psychology this season.
We have.
And we're wrapping it up with some of the craziest shit that has ever been brought to you by the U.S. government.
Brought to you by the U.S. government.
Yep. Honestly, though, who knows what else?
Their names were on like the CIA jerseys during the experiment. Sponsored by the USG. Yeah. So like ready to do this.
All right. So, hey, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. This is That's So Fucked Up, a comedy podcast about cults, crime, and other things that make you say, ugh, that's so fucked up. Boom. Mic drop. Nailed it. This is That's So Fucked Up presents a spinoff of That's So Fucked Up, where every season or month, mostly, season, we talk about a certain topic, such as psychotic psychology, which is what we've been discussing this month. If you haven't been here, hi, welcome. And we call it psychotic psychology because it's psychological experiments that were done to people during the 20th century. That's the 1900s, right?
Yep, you got it.
I always get that confused. Nailed it. Yes.
I saw a funny meme the other day that was like, hey, go easy on me, kids. I'm from the 20th century. I was born in the 1900s.
Yeah. Hey now. Okay. Hey now.
Elder millennials.
Yeah. And we're your hosts, those people. I'm Ashley Love Richards.
And I'm Fallon Morey.
And we are here to wrap up psychotic psychology and MKUltra. And if y'all weren't here last week, Fallon, catch some up on what they missed, but you guys should go listen to the episode. Don't be silly. Come on.
I'm not going to give you a bunch of spoilies, but basically in the 1950s and 60s, a super paranoid U.S. government led by the CIA conducted a huge number of experiments to try to, you name it, shape the human mind, control the human mind, create super soldiers, influence world leaders, create, like Zoolander type assassins.
The real shit of comic books.
The real stuff of comic books brought to life, brought to you by the CIA. And this
shady motherfuckers.
And we talked about some of the basics. So you got to go back and listen. But today we're going to talk about the different sub-projects and other things that were carried out in the name of MKUltra, in the name of science.
So last week we talked about did we talk about what was was there an operation name for them just fucking dosing everybody with LSD?
No, because the operation names were typically put into the different projects that they were part of. So the overall backbone of MKUltra largely was LSD, but there were other things that we're going to talk about today. And we're going to talk about some of those operations too.
And last week we talked about Operation Paperclip, where the U.S. government took a bunch of murderous Nazi motherfuckers and gave them nice houses and cushy jobs and good stuff.
That's
right. If you want more deets, and if you want to hear why they were dosing everybody randomly, not only, prisoners and fucking to other people who could not consent, but also their own people, then you got to go listen to part 1.
Yeah, it's wild enough, but you gotta get into that wildness before you can get through today. So, are you ready?
I'm so ready.
Get your fluffy pillow to sit on. Get yourself happy. So today we're going to talk about some of the other types of experiments they did with people that weren't just LSD driven, but we're also going to talk about some specific operations and sub-projects of the CIA. So I'm going to open with a fun one. We're going to talk about an operation that was named Operation Midnight Climax.
Oh, yeah, I remember this one. This is definitely the least nefarious. So that's good. You're bringing us in gently.
Kind of. But the guy who ran it was a real asshole. And
yeah,
so,
don't love a lot of these guys who are running these projects. A lot of them did not seem on the most up and up.
So this originally started with just one, what they called a safe house. And it eventually expanded into sort of a couple different locations. But what the CIA did was they set up essentially what were these like one-room brothels. And what they would do is they would put like a room and they would decorate it like a bedroom in a room or a building. But those rooms had big two-way mirrors installed. So what would happen was sex workers would bring men to the rooms. They would meet them just in town. They would offer to bring them back to their place, and they would bring these men to these rooms. They were being paid by the CIA, sometimes with promises that they would have records expunged if they had them, or preferential treatment from law enforcement later on if they found themselves like in a bind.
Mm-hmm.
And they would bring these men back to these rooms, and then all of the reactions would be monitored by a team of CIA operatives behind a mirror. And this was, at some point, of course, the men would be dosed with LSD somehow.
Right. Okay. So obviously, this is not chill to do to people. But compared to some of the mind breaking of people that they're trying to do in these other experiments, I'd call this a little bit less nefarious.
So the guy who ran this was, whose picture on this was a man by the name of George Hunter White. He was actually a supervisor in the New England FBI Narcotics Bureau. And at some point, he started to get a little weird and a little overly involved with this operation. So they started to get obsessed with not just the LSD and the reaction part, but obsessed with the sexual part of the operation. And in specific, at what point during a sexual encounter is the best point to extract information from the subject?
So is it like foreplay, during climax, after climax?
Right. Do you have a guess?
After.
Yeah.
When you're nice and loosened up.
Immediately after was the determined time. They also were working with these sex workers to see if they could train them to handle state secrets, if they were able to get secrets from people. But later on, the man who ran this, George White, is quoted as saying, "Where else could a red-blooded American boy lie, kill, cheat, steal, rape, and pillage with the sanction and blessing of the all-highest?" So he was like getting his jollies from carrying this out.
Ew.
Yeah.
Oh, you guys, my face right now is like somebody just shit in the room. Like, that is so gross, dude. What a fucking freak.
Somebody took a dump in the corner of Ashley's studio, and that's the face she's making.
Sorry, bro. I'm kink shaming the fuck out of you. You're getting off on this, and it's weird as hell, you fucking weirdo.
Yeah, so those eventually ended, and no useful information except after somebody climaxes, they're more willing to talk about stuff. What?
Like when we're smoking a cigarette and shit too?
Right? Other experiments done during MKUltra involved not only different types of drugs, but also medical experiments. One of the techniques they tested in European detention centers was to put a person into a coma with barbiturates intravenously into one arm and then put stimulants into the other arm. And in the phase in between, they would shock them with high doses of electricity to see if it could disintegrate a person's mind.
They were getting real fucking creative. It's a real shame that with all of the absolute torture they carried out upon people, they didn't learn shit.
Right.
Oh my God.
They gave people extremely high doses of psychoactive drugs, LSD, but then also some other ones. And they also would give them other chemicals. I couldn't find specifics on all the different ones they gave them, but they would subject people to things like extreme temperatures, electroshocks, hypnosis, sensory deprivation, isolation, verbal and sexual abuse, it's assumed, and other forms of torture.
The sexual abuse to break somebody, I think, is what is the most disturbing to me. Super weirdly, right? I know that's weird that's highly disturbing to me. But later when we hear
highly disturbing to anyone.
Yeah. If it's not, maybe check yourself. Okay. I think later when we talk about, the project that can't be verified because all the records were destroyed.
Yeah.
I always try to believe victims anyways. And you guys are like, what are you talking about, Ashley? But I think that it's so important to remember when people come forward, in the future, of this happening, post all of this bullshit and say, this happened to me. The story sounds so fucking out there that everybody's like, yeah, no, like, why would they do that? To break somebody's brain. Like, they went to all measures, physical, mental, emotional. Why wouldn't they try to break you with fucking vicious, torturous, sexual shit?
Right. Of course. No, they just stopped short at one method.
Right. Ugh.
When you consider, too, that they also did radiation experiments, for example, feeding radioactive material to mentally disabled children, hitting men's testicles with radiation to see at what point a man would be rendered sterile.
I forgot. I'm like, obviously, I'd be a super good actress if I was faking all of these responses. I forgot so many of the details of this. It's yikes.
It gets better. Enlisting doctors to administer radioactive iron to impoverished pregnant women and
to see if they'll become fucking superheroes. Like, what the fuck?
And exhuming bodies. This one is, I got to put a stop. Well, I got to put a stop to all of it, but exhuming bodies from graveyards to test them for radiation without the consent of the families of the deceased. So we're just going to grave rob and just like test people's bones, probably not bury them again correctly.
And this is the CIA, the Central Intelligence Agency of the United States government of America.
A government-sponsored agency.
The government of America.
Correct. The government of America. There were also two, before we get into all the other sub-projects, there were two like honorable mention sub-projects we're not going into. One called MKUltra, which is where Gottlieb decided he wanted to explore black magic. So he and
oh my God,
other CIA employees visited with and recruited fortune tellers, palm readers, clairvoyants, astrologists, mediums, psychics, specialists in demonology. I wonder if he talked to Ed, Lorraine Warren.
Dude, probably.
Witches and warlocks, Satanists and other occult practitioners, robotics creators. They're on the list of black magic.
Listen,
and
with
more.
Where AI is potentially going, I wouldn't totally disagree with that categorization. I just kind of love that they were like, you know what, you guys, fucking let's give it all a go. Why would we rule anything out here? That's the only thing that I love. I hate everything else about it. I do just love that they were like, bring in the tarot cards. Who's that lady who said she can read palms and shit? Yeah, bring her over. This is official government business.
Okay. So let's talk about some of these sub-projects. There was one particularly awful one that was called MKUltra Sub-Project 68. There is documentation of it in classified CIA documents. and it described it as a 1-year program that was continued as a means to support a research program, the effects upon human behavior of the repetition of verbal signals. It was trying to examine the impact of heteropsychic driving, which is basically like if you give somebody drugs and play a bunch of sounds to them and then try to force them to do stuff, that will they eventually do it?
And again, that was a no, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a no. It was run by a British psychiatrist named Donald Ewan Cameron, who was a member of the Nuremberg trials, not on trial. He was a member of trying people at the Nuremberg trials. He was a pioneer. I looked up a little info on him. He was a pioneer in uniting scientific knowledge of the brain and the body together versus seeing one without the other, which is not something that typically people did back then. It was like brain people thought the brain did everything and body people thought medicine thought the body did everything.
Isn't that wild that now we know that they're super fucking connected?
Yes.
That so many of our physical ailments and health issues are actually from mental and emotional shit. You guys, it's crazy.
He believed that all psychiatric illnesses and issues were hardwired and biological versus necessarily a factor of the environment. And he also became interested in how to manipulate the brain to control memory and the effects of aging. One of the scariest parts is that despite all of what he did in the future, but he was president of the American Psychiatric Association, the Canadian Psychiatric Association, and a bunch of other, like the World Psychiatric Association.
And you know what? That I hate to sound all, conspiracy theory-ish, because I would love to say like, oh, you could trust the American Psychiatric Association. You guys, you just got to do your own independent research, okay? Don't get all QAnon on us, but listen, do your own research. Check out the facts.
Here are the ideas that he hoped to further by being in charge. One was that society was divided into weak and strong, and it was the role of the strong to isolate and control the weak. He viewed people with mental illnesses as not only ill, but weak. He also believed that the weak should not influence children, aka eugenics were A-okay for him. Basically,
that's when you're like, you know what, we're gonna just not let those people continue making other humans,
right?
Because we don't like the color of their skin or their intelligence level, or
like something Hitler was very interested in.
Something, super generally pretty racist and shit. Yeah.
He also, at the same time, fostered intense fear of German people and believed that German people had a tendency to organize society in a way that fostered intense anxiety, fear, and aggression. And he was spreading all these rumors about German people in general, that they shouldn't have positions of power. And the archetype he made known was that he based all his definition of deviant behavior on German people, which is also pretty ridiculous because, he was like making a huge like stereotype of one country full of people.
Is it though? I'm just kidding. I know at least one great German friend listening.
My family is German. My original last name is German.
You know what? Much love, you guys. If you listened to the third wave, you probably learned that Hitler could have been anywhere. He just happened to be in Germany. That guy. Like not him exactly,
but that kind of person. Yeah. So Dr. I keep saying his name wrong. Dr. Cameron, right? No, Dr. Ewan. I don't know how to say that name. Like McGregor. He carried out his experiments at a place called Allen Memorial Institute at McGill University in Montreal, Canada. And this was what was known as the Montreal experiments or Subproject 68. Research funds were sent to him by a CIA front organization, which was the Society for the Investigation of Human Ecology. It was like basically a big front to funnel money to people to do torture experiments.
Wow.
And partially funded by the Canadian government.
Oh, they're in cahoots, huh?
There
In
is
cahoots, eh?
cahoots, eh? It's not clear from the research whether or not he was actually aware of whether the money was coming from the CIA, because a lot of people argued like he would have probably done all this shit anyway, even without the CIA's money, which is gross.
Yeah.
He claimed that his aim was to erase, rewrite, and program a person's mind with all new thoughts and personality. He was doing it to cure schizophrenia. He thought that
Wait. Heavy air quotes.
heavy
right?
air
On
quotes.
the to cure schizophrenia, or do you think that he actually
Well, that's
really wanted to do that?
Well, that's the thing that they say. Like he viewed that psychological illness was like a toxin or a disease that could be spread to others. So he thought like he would, like some people say he would have done these experiments anyway. He really thought if he could rewire people's brains, he could like stop the spread of schizophrenia.
This is like mad scientist.
Oh
shit,
yeah, this
for
is
sure.
wild. Listen, check it.
Wait.
Stop,
Bitch.
Whoa,
Stop.
bitch.
Hold on.
His methods involve breaking people down to a childlike state and allowing him to rewrite them. He called it depatterning them. Some of his experiments including inducing comas for weeks or months while playing tapes in the background of simple messages on a constant loop. Like people were subject to hearing the same message for like 500,000 times over and over and over and over and over.
That's torture.
He delivered intense electroshock therapy at 30 to 40 times the normal accepted power.
That's also torture.
And sensory deprivation.
Torture as well.
Yes.
All methods of torture.
All torture.
But he's doing this to cure people of their schizophrenia, right?
Heavy air quotes.
So, okay, hold on. He's taking people who are already experiencing schizophrenia and then torturing them.
Correct. Or people not even experiencing schizophrenia.
Like Whitey Bulger, the fucking gangster.
But not him. That was a separate experiment. But he frequently treated those with simple issues like anxiety, stress, arthritis, and postnatal depression, what we call today postpartum depression. So he would,
hey, doc, I'm feeling some arthritis. Okay, here, go and be in sensory deprived and repetitive words.
20 hours a day of the same audio tape. So to highlight one of the people that were actually his victims, we don't always get to do that, but there was a woman named Esther Scryer, and she went to Ewan's facility to get treatment for what would today be called postpartum depression. She lost a baby after she gave birth and had a lot of anxiety about losing another one. And she was pregnant at the time. And so they were told, like, this guy was godlike to people in Canada. They were told that he had cutting edge psychological treatments. But instead, she was given copious amounts of drugs, sometimes 4 to 5 barbiturates and amphetamines at a time, and then subject to electroshock treatments and psychological therapies. After her treatment, her notes, and I actually had some, like a little thing from his notes on her, and it's like, this patient's weight has fallen by 2 pounds. Here's all the drugs she's put on. She has had 16 days of sleep. She has had 10 electroconvulsive therapy, the last being today.
16 days of sleep?
Yeah, like he put her in an induced coma.
Oh.
For like 16 days of sleep. After her treatment, when her notes indicate she was totally depatterned, she was mute, incontinent, and had trouble swallowing. She told her son later that after she left, she had to relearn how to do everything. Like, she didn't remember who her husband was when he came to pick her up, and she didn't remember how to boil water. And this was a grown-ass woman who had, like, lived on her own, cared for a family, didn't remember how to boil water.
So he made her lose her fucking mind, all right.
Yeah, in an interview once she said, I had a new baby and I didn't know what to do with the baby. I had a baby nurse, but she had to have a day off and she left me a book. I'll give you a little example. When you hear the baby cry, go to the room, pick up the baby, and step by step how to feed the baby. Because she didn't know, like, when my baby cries, I should go pick it up and, like, feed it. Like, she didn't remember any of that.
And she had already been doing all of that.
Yeah, she had a baby for a while after, like, that it passed away, but Her son actually, who was in utero at the time, says, this is his words. He said he was a little slow at the beginning, and he and actually other victims like him have been trying to seek restitution from the Canadian government to show that this kind of trauma is multi-generational. It splits families up. Kids have all these issues. Some kids got put in foster care and adoptive homes, just endless repeating trauma.
That's so fucking... I hate these guys.
I know. I think you're going to hate him more because I think we're going to talk about the experiment you were referring to earlier, which is Project Monarch.
Oh, that's right. That's what it's... Oh,
Project
trigger warning.
Big trigger warning, guys.
Like,
big trigger
fast
warning,
forward
y'all.
for how long if you don't want to hear this shit? Maybe
probably 10 minutes.
Yeah, like this is
probably
heavy,
10 minutes.
Basically alleged child torture.
Yeah, child torture or child sex trafficking, essentially.
Yeah, this one's fucking gnarly, but so important to talk about because it obviously definitely happened. They obviously definitely burned the records of this one because it's the worst.
So Project Monarch was probably arguably the most insidious of all of the subprojects, but it hasn't been verified in any documents. And this is, if you've ever seen, like a conspiracy theory type movie about sleeper agents or like CIA sex slaves or something like that, like woman who suddenly wakes up from being a stay-at-home mom and housewife and now she can hold a gun and, like kill everyone. This is probably what you're talking about. So supposedly this was based around the CIA having various levels of agents that they were programming. So alpha level is general programming. I don't know what general programming is. Maybe like how to shoot a gun and you're
being
a
general.
No.
Maybe. Oh.
Beta is sex slave programming. That's what they called it. Gamma is programming that allows the subject to deceive and misdirect others. Theta, psychic programming designed to create assassins. And Omega, a self-destruct programming. And supposedly they were programming people to do all these different possible levels, depending on what their jobs were. The ideas behind this really became so much a part of the culture of what people think of as mind control, probably more than any of the like actual verified experiments.
So, Fallon, what would be the point of turning somebody into a sex slave? Like, I don't even see how that would benefit the cause. Could you tell me?
Yeah, because the goal is that you awaken this like beta programming and that sex slave programming. You can get a person in like basically into a situation with an important world leader or a member of the opposition or even someone high in your own government to like extract secrets. And then later you could take the secrets out of their head and supposedly wake them back up and they would never remember.
And they would get these secrets via sexual blackmail or whatever, right?
Basically. Yeah. So again, there's all this stuff that says it's not substantiated, but I don't know if I really believe that.
Listen, y'all can believe what you want. I don't buy that bullshit for a minute. I think all of this happened. I believe it happened, but hey, that's just me.
So there are a couple of people that have come forward and told their stories. There's one woman, she's not named, but she reports being administered LSD for 10 weeks, once a week at the age of 13, after her parents had done an LSD experiment as well. She was locked in a dark room with someone observing her. They didn't tell her parents what would happen or counsel the kids afterward. And then she wasn't classified as like a sex slave, but basically she essentially had a nervous breakdown and her sister later said like everything done to her was basically ongoing abuse and torture, and she really never recovered. The most famous victim, arguably, of Project Monarch is named Kathy O'Brien. She, according to her story, the CIA would look for children that were already prone to something that is now called DID, dissociative identity disorder, previously called multiple personality disorder or multiple personality syndrome. while many people are actually in the psychological community are torn about whether this is a actual diagnosis, because usually it can often be explained by some other type of diagnosis. One of the things that often precedes this is some sort of extreme abuse in childhood, in many cases, or some sort of heavy trauma.
That's cute. So they look for children who are already susceptible to being broken because they've already experienced so much trauma.
Yes. So Kathy
Great.
had been subject to SA at her home by her own father. He went to prison for selling CSAM materials of her through the mail. And basically, according to her testimony, he basically gave her to the government in exchange for a lighter sentence. So like, here, you can have this kid and you can do whatever.
Dude, if y'all could see my face right now, my stomach hurts. That's fucking, that's so vile.
She wrote a novel where she said in her novel, this is from her own words, she was then trained, abused by the CIA, and trafficked to men of high power in the United States and other countries from childhood through the age of 40. Some of the famous people she calls out in her work that she was trafficked to include Gerald Ford, Dick Cheney, and both Bill and Hillary Clinton.
Wow.
Yeah. If you look at her like social media, she calls out like Hillary Clinton on several of her posts, like as one of her abusers, even to this day.
Dude, listen, and you guys, I know, I can hear you, I can see you saying that is so fucking hard to believe because it's so fucking crazy. But also, we know that they were actually doing the other shit.
Yep.
And we know that they purposely ruined records. And wouldn't they ruin records of the worst things they did? They'd be like, okay, obviously we have to fess up to some shit. They know
they're not going to declassify the records of the pregnant women that they psychologically tortured and then like leave the other ones open, right?
Right. They're gonna get rid of the stuff that sounds most heinous and sounds most unbelievable because of how incredibly fucking heinous it is.
We're presenting like all the sides here. So in general, on this podcast, we are on the side of victims. We're going to present the evidence, which is out of her own words. And there are some interesting things that people have pointed out in her defense of her telling the truth. It's really up to you all to make a decision in your own mind. Her unofficial title in this project was presidential model. According to her, she received psychological manipulation, and by speaking certain trigger words, they could wake up one of her alternate personalities, which would then go and have sex with these powerful figures. She also alleges that she and her daughter were subject to sexual abuse by Satanists as well, but doesn't note if it's like part of this project.
So also I've been looking into this stuff for a while because I'm a very sick individual. Listen, you guys are fucking here too, okay? But I mean, obviously this is some really fucking heavy allegations, and I have found other accounts of people being brainwashed into doing some really wild things, and it can never be fucking verified, obviously, because I can't talk about it that much super publicly because I know that some people will start to think, oh, Ashley, well, can we trust you? But it's you can't ever prove the shit that goes all the way to the top, right? It goes all the way to the top, but try to give victims the benefit of the doubt and say, okay, well, if this story sounds so crazy, would there have been a reason for it happening? Oh yeah, that's right. This whole thing.
Right. And we're going to talk about that like kind of thought process in a second. She was actually rescued from the project by her husband, Mark Phillips. He had claimed to be an intelligence operative who was mistakenly working for a government shell company. The two moved away together and he helped her to publish her book. So if some of you are out there saying this story is totally crazy, there are a few things that people point out in different references I read. So when her story came out, she mentioned MKUltra, Monarch, Project Bluebird, and Project Artichoke. But while people knew a little bit about it, this was not like on Wikipedia and all over the internet. Like nobody really knew about it. So like she knew all these project names and sub-project names and like predecessors, like things that people might know only who are really deeply involved with the project at the time. And
Right. So how would she fucking know all that?
And she and her husband also sent a free copy of the book to every single senator that was in office at the time it was published. So if they were going to silence her for her knowledge, they could have. Some think that this might mean that there might be too much truth to it, that by like silencing somebody that it would come out that there was something to worry about.
Mm-hmm.
So she's still alive and she publishes various things about her experiences. But I would definitely, look it up if it's something you're interested in and you can see like the different viewpoints about her story. But if it is probably, she also has referred to other people who were part of the project with her. And it turns out that those people were substantiated to be part of other projects that were known to be doing like sex work for the CIA. So
really? And it was substantiated.
Yeah, not necessarily part of Project Monarch, but they were also part of like other projects that had sexual like factors in it. And so that lends some credibility, some people think, to what she was saying.
It's so sad too that obviously there's so much onus on her to prove that she was like brutally victimized.
Yeah.
Because also one of their projects, or maybe not a particular project, but a tenant of the project or whatever, was to essentially to gaslight people.
Right.
And to make them look fucking crazy in front of everybody else.
Yeah, well, that was a big part of that, like MK Delta. There was a project called MK Delta, and part of that was, I think, basically discrediting people who they did experiments on later, so that they couldn't like speak because then they just look fucking crazy.
Oh, great! So a nice little project to manage the disasters caused by the other projects.
Right. Exactly.
Projects on projects.
Right. I mean, there were like 180 of them. So one of the other absolutely awful ones was from 1940 to 1953. A doctor named Loretta Bender, who was a respected child neuropsychiatrist, experimented on more than 500 children. They had been homeless or diagnosed with what they called at the time autistic schizophrenia. You can know how mad this makes me. She would experiment on them using electroshock and LSD.
This fucking bitch.
Yeah.
She's kind of the only woman that we know of. I mean, I'm sure there was others.
Yeah. She's one of the...
She was evil as fuck.
So she went to a conference that was held by a CIA front group. It was called the Josiah Macy Foundation. And the conference was focused on using LSD on children for like other purposes. I don't know if it was like for curative purposes or to like cure illnesses, but she decided like, ooh, LSD on kids. I want to get in on that.
Love that.
Love that for me. So a few months later, she gets notified that her planned LSD experiments would be partially funded by the Society for the Investigation of Human Ecology, which is the same one that funded Dr. Ewan in Canada, who experimented on,
which was just essentially a shady front organization.
Right.
Not any kind of society for anything noble whatsoever.
Yeah. So she was doing she was sort of under this umbrella of these projects by this society, and this particular umbrella of projects, which included the other guy we talked about, was like top secret psychological warfare. It was like 55 sub projects. It was underwritten by the CIA as well. It involved LSD experiments with like could people be given ESP, psychological warfare, basically like Stranger Things. Like, I
was gonna say, this is so Stranger Things. Actually, the the brothers who made Stranger Things said that it's inspired by MKUltra. They've said that.
Oh, yeah? Well,
Yeah.
yeah, I would imagine.
Yeah. 11 is like the fucking Deborah lady, kind of.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Yeah, a little
Kinda.
bit.
Wasn't the Men Who Stare at Goats thing also a part
I
of
think
this shit?
so. I was thinking about them early. I swear to God, you're in my mind today. Like every time I want to say something, you're like right there.
Hello. I'm there first.
You're there first.
What's up? Hi, it's me.
The sticker you sent me for my wall actually has like a trace amount of LSD on it. You're just slowly experimenting on me.
Mm-hmm.
Touch your sticker. Do it.
And that camera that you're looking at right now, that's actually always on.
I gotta go.
Da, da, da.
So there are some people that have spoken out about this project, and it brought up even more things that happened. So Ted Ginderson served with the FBI for 28 years and ended his career as the head of the FBI's LA office. And he's written and commented extensively on organized pedophilia operations, and he thinks that there are ties in the US. So there are like between 6,000 to 50,000 missing children every year. This was back when he was writing about this. And they're often very well protected and organized abductors. He said there's a CIA front organization called the Finders, and it was a top secret clearance, and its assigned task was basically kidnapping and torture programming young children throughout the US. So he thinks that like all these uncredited kidnappings were like all these unsolved kidnappings were like the CIA kidnapping, torturing, and programming children.
See, and I'm on board with this. I believe it. I feel that it really starts to get super slippery into like QAnon type shit. And I don't want to lend any fucking credence to any of that absolute shenanigans nonsense.
No.
So here's what I think I have to say about that is just like, you guys use common sense and facts to guide, because that's also how, things that are conspiracy theories, that's how they never get exposed, is because they're so crazy that only the people who are talking about stuff that's actually fucking crazy and is not happening are also bringing it up, so it gets all jumbled in. So you guys, QAnon's bad, and so is the CIA.
Yeah, he says that this particular one, and this isn't like us saying this now. This is what this guy said like back in the 80s or 90s. He basically said there's this guy named Marion David Petty, and he was the leader of what he calls like a cult or this group. And he is an identified pedophile and a CIA officer. He said this guy's son was the employee of a CIA proprietary firm, which was notorious for smuggling drugs out into Saigon during the Vietnam War. So he's saying that like there's all these connections through certain people during the same time as this project, and that these, he has this theory that these kids could possibly be a big part of MKUltra.
Yeah. I mean, you guys have to decide for yourself. We're just presenting
what's out there.
Yeah. And I don't know. It's pretty wild.
Yeah. So LSD experiments actually ended officially around 1963. The CIA inspected.
Did they though?
That's why I said allegedly.
Oh, did you?
Yes.
Did you? I was already defensive in my head. I was like, no.
You were also defensive out loud.
Yeah.
As well as in your head.
But just before I went out loud, I was already prepping in my head,
Yeah. The CIA inspector generals had heard about unwitting and non-voluntary human subjects and insisted that the agency might need to follow some research ethics guidelines. You think? Well, thank you.
I think I still think they're up to all sorts of shenanigans over there.
And most MKUltra records were actually destroyed in 1973. It was by the order of the CIA director, Richard Helms. I think Gottlieb since has admitted to destroying a lot of his own records. He's also gone on record and admitted to the family of the man that died after he was overdosed. I've done things that I'm not proud of, sort of basically I killed your husband/father. Sorry about that. He's never faced any kind of prosecution. Yeah, Sidney Gottlieb tortured and killed unknown numbers of people with these experiments. In the end, he admitted, I can't find a way to control the human mind.
My bad, guys.
My bad. Sorry about that.
I thought I did, but
guess it can't be done.
That's how it goes sometimes.
And even though he personally signed off on almost all or most of the projects, he got complete immunity in exchange for his testimony and went on to continue to have a long and fruitful career with the CIA.
Oh, promotions, raises, vacations, all kinds of cute stuff.
Because, just think about this before anyone's out there this is conspiracy. They've come out and released records saying this happened. They've just released a choice amount of records that they've declassified, but so many records were destroyed that it's really hard for investigators who tried to look into it later to understand there was more than 150 funded research subprojects officially sponsored by MKUltra and related CIA programs, not to mention however many front organizations that were funneling money to not officially on the record programs.
Dude, I think this is the mother of all mind experiment episodes to talk about.
Right. What we know from this comes mostly from witness testimonies after the fact. People who, like the man whose mother was part of it, who suffered direct effects himself from his mother's torture at the hands of one of these projects. There were 20,000 incorrectly filed budgetary documents.
Oopsie.
Somebody went and made a Freedom of Information request in the 1970s, and they were like, oh, we do have a bunch of budget documents authorizing massive LSD purchases and funneling money to people. I guess you got us. They also tried to sort of resurrect some of this in the late 70s. There was something called Project Stargate, and they aimed to research paranormal phenomena like psychokinesis, mind reading, and remote viewings of events and conversations, whatever that means.
Oh, maybe that could have been the men staring at goats thing.
That could be men staring at goats. But yeah, overall, completely, absolutely fucked. Nobody got held responsible. Countless lives destroyed. Just another week here at TSFU Presents.
And just another day in the office at the CIA, motherfucker.
Yeah. Don't put your coffee down where you don't have eyes on it.
Don't work for the CIA. Okay? Don't be shady. That's the moral of today's story, is don't be a shady fuck.
And look, we covered a lot about MKUltra today, but there's probably innumerable things that we did not touch on.
Oh, that was just the tip.
That was just the tip. And I didn't like how it felt, so I stopped.
So we gave you 2 rounds of it. You didn't like how it felt, so you doubled up.
I doubled
on
up
the story.
I double wrapped it. I didn't think I could make this many jokes about a government-sponsored psychological torture program, but it also obviously spawned a ton of pop culture things like Men Who Stare at Goats, but also Firestarter by Stephen King and the movies. That's the guy was they're from a very MKUltra kind of project. And
obviously, as we mentioned, Stranger Things.
Pretty much anything that you see out there comes from about brainwashing, mind control, CIA sleeper operatives. That's super soldiers from the government. That's all
MKUltra shenanigans.
Yep, pretty much.
Wow, I'm tired.
Me too. My brain hurts.
This has been a season. We went from the Stanford prison experiment to the Milgram experiment to third wave to this.
Wow.
Holy shit. And that's just what the United States has been up to. Like I don't even, what the fuck are they getting up to in other places? I don't know.
I mean, that's just a handful too. In the US, I could tell you about probably 5 more ridiculous experiments. I'm not gonna, but it's a lot.
Yeah, you asked if you could, and I was like, girl, I think we're tapped out. I'm psychologically tapped out on the psychotic psychology.
Maybe in a few months we'll pull something out of the Fallon's files vault and give you some more, but not right now because my brain hurts.
Right now our brains are they're gonna take a little break.
Yeah.
So actually here's a little info for you guys who are still listening, who's probably very few. What's up, you guys? You're the real ones. The ones who listen to the announcements at the end. Those are the ones who really like what we have to say or are too lazy to hit the fast forward button. So here it is, you guys. Fuck, I forgot. I'm tired. Okay, that's it. Wait, I remember. So that wraps up Psychotic Psychology. We are going to take a couple weeks break from That's So Fucked Up Presents. But when we get back next month in April, I will be doing Weird Cults. Obviously, I don't have a season name yet because that's boring as fuck. And, I don't roll like that. But I have some really exciting guests. I'm going to have the gals from Pacific Northwest, Twisted and Uncorked, Yield Crime, and Trevin from Live Laugh Larceny. Those are all really great indie pods that I've mentioned on the show before, guys. So make sure to go check those shows out. And yeah, don't worry, though, if you're like, whoa, you're going to leave us high and dry, Ashley. I would never. As you know, this month we are re-looking at the Idaho murders because a new documentary has come out. Also, it's Women's History Month, so we've got something special coming for that too. So stay tuned, and if miss us and you need more, you can always go to patreon.com/TSFU where there's more, like 150 more episodes if you've run out.
That's right.
And we're taking a little breaksy. So we love you guys. Thanks for being here. YOLO, don't be a dick. Don't slip people acid.
Don't join a psychological experiment.
Don't. Like, seriously.
Definitely
never.
not at an Ivy League school. It seems to be where all the magic happens or trouble goes down.
Bad stuff. TSFUthepodcast.com for everything. Discord, bingo, Patreon, everywhere you can listen to us, all of the social media platforms, etc., etc. Thanks so much, you guys. And you know what, Fallon? That was real as fuck.
And real fucked up.
Bye. Bye-bye now. Bye. Bye.
That's so fucked up, that's so fucked up. So fucked up, that's so fucked up.